Good afternoon and welcome to our weekly coaching live in the Bold and Successful Wisdom Business Group. That was a mouthful. My name is Heather Cameron of Ignite Your Market, and today our topic is the power of questions. Questions are so key to our success as business owners, and I want to cover the power of questions. So if you're listening live, say hi. If you're on the replay, say #replay, and let's talk about the power of questions. Now, for those who don't know me, my name is Heather Cameron, as I said, and I help women entrepreneurs create the systems that turn strangers into paying clients and to create their plan of success. Because without a plan, we don't really know where we're going. So focusing on your plan of success, that will allow you to grow the business that you want and do it without a whole bunch of extra work. So getting really focused in creating your systems. So let me just check if I'm live. If you're watching me live, say hi. If you're listening to the replay, #replay. I see some eyes, so I'm assuming I am live, but I'm just going to make sure. I'm on my phone when I go live, so I'm just checking over here. And it's easier for me to see comments over there. So welcome, and I want to start with saying that questions are the foundation of really good coaching. So if you've been trained in any type of coaching, one of the things you'll be trained in is really how to ask the right questions at the right time. Hi, Linda. Thank you for joining. Ask the right questions at the right time to really use the power of questions. And the questions can do amazing things. So questions can... Sorry, I'm just getting messages over there. Questions can give you a better outcome than you even imagined was possible. When somebody asks you the right question, it can shift what you're doing and give you a better outcome. Questions can create change. They can make us look at things from a different perspective and change the way that we're doing things, or the way that we're approaching something, or the way that we're talking about something, or the way that we're thinking about ourselves. Questions are hugely powerful. Questions can innovate. If nobody ever asked a question, we wouldn't do anything different in this world. We keep doing the same things over and over again. So questions can innovate. Questions can inspire. I don't know if you've ever been asked a question, and you can answer this live or on the replay, where it just made you, all of a sudden it just clicked and you saw something from a different way, and it inspired you to take action that you really hadn't even considered before. I used to work with a gentleman in my high-tech days, and he was one of these guys who had tunnel vision. So he would be working on something, excuse me, and he had tunnel vision, and he would be like working down his tunnel, not getting distracted, which was wonderful. But sometimes you had to reset him. And we used to joke with him about that. You had to ask him a question that brought him out of his tunnel, and he might see a bigger perspective, and then he might shift, and then he'd go and do his tunnel vision. And his tunnel vision was amazingly productive. He got things done that most people didn't. So his tunnel vision had a huge value. But a power of the right question would help him step back from his tunnel vision, kind of calibrate, think if, is this the right one, and then go back down his tunnel vision. So the power of a question can really reorientate you in what you're doing. It can focus you as well. So, there are questions out there where, you're not sure what to do next, and you get the right question, and it can focus you to actually work on the right thing. So it has the ability to bring you back from being too focused, and it has the ability to focus you. It can increase your commitment. And I'll go through a story about that in a minute, of things that I've been doing in the last week, just to realize, to reaffirm how much good questions can really increase your commitment to what you're doing. It can increase your success. It can open your mind up to possibilities. It can make you think of things you've never imagined. There's just so much that we can do with good questions. And what's I realize in working with clients, and I realize for myself, is that we aren't actually that good at asking questions of ourselves, but we're also not that good at asking questions of other people. So that's where this came up with, was currently I'm participating in a friend's accountability get it done type challenge. She invited me to participate in it, and it's like 14 days of saying what you're going to do and then reporting back in a group setting to analyze, did you do what you said you were going to do? And if you didn't, why? And if you did, what could you do differently? So there's some really powerful questions that came up in this. And just by having that accountability, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, and really good questions, it shifts and you get more done. right? So the power of a question is one of the reasons that coaches exist. Really good coaches know how to ask really good questions. And in the coaching industry, there are two types of people. There are coaches who have been trained through some sort of coaching training, and then there are people who have decided to be a coach. Now, often the people who have decided to be a coach are more they're more advisors and consultants. They've done something, they've worked, and now they're teaching people how to do something similar to what they've done. And they may have natural coaching abilities or they may not. But there's that, and then you will find there's coaches who've gone through some coach training who actually do know how to ask really good questions, and they know how to let silence exist for people to be able to answer the questions, because that's also one is the power of a really good question, and the second part of this is the ability to ask the question and let somebody answer the question before you answer it for them. And sometimes that's a challenge for me because my mind's thinking really fast and I'm seeing things, and so sometimes I don't leave enough space for the question to be answered, and I have to remind myself to do that. So there's that side of questioning is, number one, do you know how to ask a good question? And I'm going to go over, there's really actually only 4 types of questions. And they're very broad-based, but they are true, and they have a purpose. And there's a place for all 4 types of questions. But if we use them the wrong way, then we don't get the answer that we want. So the first one that we're the most familiar with and get asked almost always is the yes/no questions. Do you want to go for a walk? Yes, no. Do you want to do lives on Instagram? Yes, no. Right? And they are very close-ended. They're called close-ended questions. They are looking for a yes or a no, and they don't leave a lot of opportunity to think about a different solution. So they don't open up opportunities. And they're easy to flip. Yes/no questions are kind of the don't ask them in the coaching world. They're good for certain purposes. If you're designing a survey. So if you're going to survey people, it's a really good idea to start your survey with an easy question and end your survey with an easy question. Those ones are good. There's a purpose for those. Another question is when you're asking for something specific. What's your phone number? How many times did you post on Instagram today? What's your website? How much would you like to make in the next 6 months? What's your business, right? These are very specific questions. And they're part of a series of questions, but you're looking for something very specific, right? So there's a specific thing that you're looking for. It's a piece of information, typically one that's very easy for us to answer. And that's an easy question. And then there are the questions that are going to open up things the most. And those are the 5 W questions: the what, where, how, when, why, those types of questions. So you can turn a yes/no question into a really broad, open-end, exploratory question by just putting one of those words on the front of it. So for example, where I said, do you want to do Zoom? Do you want to do lives on Instagram? Yes or no? That would be a very closed-ended question. Why do you want to do lives on Instagram is a very open-ended question. What would happen if you did lives on Instagram? It's a very open-ended question. When do you want to do lives on Instagram? That's more specific, right? You're asking for something tangible. So the W's have, when you ask the when, they tend to have that specificity, but the W questions on why and what and how, those ones are the really powerful open-ended questions that you can use for yourself. So open-ended questions are good for other people. They're good if you're a coach. They're good no matter what business you're in to ask open-ended questions. But they're also really good for yourself, right? They're really good to kind of set your intention and do that. Another type of question is kind of what might be termed as a tag question, where you're purposely loading the question to get the answer you want, right? And I'm trying to think of a good example of a loaded question, because we all ask them. You'd really like to go out for pizza, wouldn't you? Right? That would be a loaded question. Like, of course you want to go out for pizza. You really want to be on Instagram, don't you? Right? So they're a little bit open-ended, they're a little bit closed, and there's better examples of that, but usually a tag question, and we've all experienced them, is when somebody's asking a question to lead you to the answer they want you to come to. And they're very persuasive. You see them a lot. I've experienced them a lot from my peers when they're trying to close a sales call. They can use them really heavily and sometimes very aggressively. Like, of course you want to make 10K this month. Like, of course that's what you want. And you want to invest in that because don't you really want to make 10K this month? Aren't you ready to get things going? Those are kind of those questions that are leading you to something. So they get used a lot in sales conversations. But in a coaching world, in a growth world where we're trying to help people shift, the what's and why questions are really powerful. Hi, Anne. Thank you for joining. Thanks for joining. We're just talking about the power of questions and how useful questions can be. So we've talked about what they can do for us. They can change our outcome, they can change our perspective. And there really are 4 types of questions. There's the close-ended question, the one that really doesn't open up any opportunity. And there's a place for closed-ended questions, by the way. There's a place for all of them. Then there's the open-end questions based on the 5 W's, the how, what, when, where, who, why, those questions. And some of them are a subset of what I would call specific questions, like how much do you want to make this month? That's a very specific question, still a how question. How are you going to do it is even more open, right? How are you going to behave, right? So each how question can have a little more depth. So what, and then we move to how. When is more specific. When are you going to do this? We're looking for specificity when we talk about those words. But those 5 W's are really powerful ways to ask questions of other people and of yourself. So how can you use questions to get to your own success? And that's one of the things that I wanted to cover. And one of the things that I was reminded of in this 14-day challenge I'm doing with a friend of mine, which is an accountability challenge. One of the ways that she ends every day is to ask 3 simple questions, and I added one more to it. And the first simple question is, actually I'll make it 5. The first one is, did you do what you said you were going to do? That's a simple yes or no question. And it's really interesting because when you ask that question to somebody who hasn't done what they said they were going to do, they start justifying. So I also want to say when you're using questions, you want to receive the answers without judgment. You want to receive the answers from yourself, particularly with a sense of curiosity and a sense of how could I take this information and do something different? Right? Because we tend to get into this, and this is what I noticed on her accountability calls that she's having once a day to go with this programs, is that when people aren't doing what they said they were going to do, they start to justify. They start to get into story mode and start to justify all of the reasons why it couldn't happen versus really asking themselves, what happened here? Why didn't I get it done? Why wasn't I accountable to what I said that I was doing? They got very judgmental and they got very blaming themselves. So they went into this negative headspace, and that doesn't help us move forward in our business in any way or our life, because these are not all business people. It doesn't make us move forward in our life and our business when we get into the negative space of answering questions. And I don't know if you've experienced that with questions yourself. Have you experienced where, you're asking a question and you get into that negative answer and that starts leading you down a negative path, as opposed to asking the question, really answering the question without judgment. And so that was one of the parts that came out in this. So the first question is, did you do what you said you were going to do? And so that one is a really good thing for you to reflect if you're trying to be more productive in your days, if you're trying to be more efficient in your business, if you're trying to get better outcomes in your business, and you have a plan. If you're not working your plan, then it's a really good question to say, did I do what I said I was going to do? No. And then the next question would be, why? What got in the way? Was it some really urgent thing? Was it, and I could do a whole live coaching on urgency, because we've built a lot of urgency in our lives that really aren't urgent. Or did we just prioritize what did we prioritize what we wanted to do lower than something else? Do we allow interrupts to take us off of our priority? And then you can ask some questions around that. So the other questions that you can ask yourself, and these are really good daily questions to ask. What worked well today? Wonderful question. What went well today? What worked really, really well today? What didn't work? And the answer could be everything worked really well today, right? Or the opposite, nothing worked today. And what didn't work? And then how would I do it differently? So even if you have a super successful day, you can ask yourself a question of how would I do this differently? And maybe the answer is I wouldn't do anything differently. Or maybe it would be, wow, that was really successful. And I'm going to reflect a little bit on how I did things differently so that I can repeat that on a daily basis. I can learn from that really successful day. Or it could be where you said you were going to do something. I'll give you an example because I've committed to working on my website through this accountability thing once, at least an hour every day, and work on some sales activity at least an hour every day. And what I noticed, I think it was Thursday or Friday last week, I did the website work first and I got really down and excited into it and I worked on it and I never really got to the sales activity, which was more important for my business than doing the website. But I got into the fun stuff and I prioritized that over the stuff that really would make a difference for my business. So by asking what worked and what didn't work, and then asking what I would do differently, it was a really good shift. So from that day forth, I scheduled my sales activities first, and I did the website. I've been doing the website in the afternoon afterwards because it's easier. In fact, it's simple to spend an hour playing with your website, but it's easier to do that when I've done my sales stuff. So just that simple question of what would I do differently, asked at the right moment when you're being kind of reflective on what you're doing with your time, was a really powerful question. Now, in the context of your business, let's say you are creating something. Let's say you've run a campaign of some sort. And a campaign just means you're shining the spotlight on your product. And you get to the end of it and you look at your results and you say, what worked and what didn't work, and what would I do differently? Because what happens, I see a lot of people do this, and I've done this myself, where I create what I think is the awesome next offer, and I put it out and I don't really get much traction. So instead of asking the right questions and asking what worked and what didn't work and what would I do differently, kind of ignore it all and say, well, that didn't work and I don't really want to look at it. So I'll put blinders on and I'll go and do something else instead of taking what I did, doing some really good analysis and then redoing it. And then taking what I did, doing some good analysis and redoing it. So those three questions can be really powerful in any context. And I'm curious, for those who are on live, do you ever ask yourself those questions? Are they questions that you use frequently? Because they can really change how the focus of your business, and they can be used in your personal life as well. They're not just business questions. But do you ever give yourself that sense of reflection? What worked? What didn't work? What would I do differently? And then there's a fourth question which you can use, which is also applicable, is how did I feel? Right? So you could have this awesome day. It worked really well. Things were great, but you really didn't feel good about it, right? You felt stressed and yeah, you got good outcomes, but you didn't feel good or excited about your day. So how do you feel is another good check-in. I used to use a reflection check-in every night. Now I see I need to start doing it again. I'm confident that would make a difference. Absolutely, Linda, because it will make a difference. That just and I think some people teach reflection either too high level or too detailed. So there's a nice balance in between them. But these 4 questions have been really good for me because they've made me reflect, and therefore I'm being more efficient, and I'm not necessarily working any harder. I'm not necessarily working any longer. I'm just being more purposeful about my time because I'm asking myself my questions. And one of the things that came up today in our conversations was I can schedule an hour to do something, but the next step that came from asking these questions is what would I do differently, is I need to be better at choosing what I'm doing in that hour. So I can say that I'm working on my website for an hour every day, but am I doing the right parts, right? So just even those 4 simple questions moved me towards working smarter. Exactly, right? So you'd be working smarter. It moved me towards working smarter by just asking a really simple question, which is where this topic came from today, was that realization that these simple questions, right? We get really complicated about business, but these really, really simple questions are the ones that are going to make us use our time better. Right? And then if you couple in some other of the who, what, where, and why inside of that, then they're going to, build. And that's that example that I just used, right? What didn't work well? Well, I'm not getting the result, like with the website stuff, it's not moving as fast. Well, why isn't it moving as fast? Because I've had some issues with WordPress. That's a whole other story, but the techie in me goes and starts playing and investigates. So not only an hour goes by, but 2 hours go by. And I might have learned a lot about what's going on with WordPress, but I didn't actually work on my website, right? So having those questions really helped me get specific. Love this. I need to finish listening on the replay. Thank you, Anne. It is. These are really powerful questions. And they're simple questions, right? And we don't have to, I'm not a journaler. I try to journal, but it's not my natural self. I'm not a journal. I will pick up a journal once in a while and I'll put it down. And I've been on many courses and thoughts and stuff like that about journaling. And it's not me, but I can ask these questions to myself. I can reflect on them. I don't necessarily need to write and journal it down. Journaling is very powerful and it works really well for a lot of people. It's not my natural way of doing things, so I use it when I need to think sometimes, but I can ask these questions without a journal and I can still articulate the questions. So whether you like to journal or whether it's just some way that you close your day or you close your hour or you finish off, all of that works as well, right? Because they're powerful questions, right? What worked well? What worked? Just period. What worked well? What worked? What didn't work? How did I feel? And what would I do differently? And they're great coaching questions for someone else as well, but just to coach yourself and do this. And again, not having any judgment on the answers to these questions. Be curious. Linda, one question I used to ask myself was, what are the consequences of not doing the task I assigned myself? That is a brilliant question. And that's a really good question to get you through, away from putting tasks off. So that's a powerful coaching question, right? And I love powerful coaching questions because they don't need to be complex. But what's the consequence of not doing the tasks I assigned myself? And what's the consequence? One of the things that's come up in the conversations that we've been having in this accountability thing is that the self-talk we give ourselves is something that we would never say to our best friend. We're really hard on ourselves in the way that we talk to ourselves, in the way that we position things, and how we say things. So questions like this really help you pull out the consequence and actually say, well, okay, why? Because another follow-up question to that, Linda, is why are you not keeping your word to yourself? And what can you do to increase your likelihood of keeping your word to yourself? Because most of the stuff that we do this to, we're not doing the things that would move our business forward. And usually it's a head game. There's a reason why we're not doing this. There's something in the background that's holding us back. So even when we articulate the consequences of not doing it, then the next question would be is, why am I not doing this? So what would I do differently, right? Why am I not doing the things that I say I'm going to do? I've mentioned this before on lives. One of the things that I know for business is really good is consistency, and it's one of the things I struggle with. So why am I not consistent? Right? It's a really good question that I have to keep reflecting on, is what pulls me back from being consistent? And consistency can be on social media, consistent can be on what I'm working on. There's a bunch of things. And I know part of it is I'm a creator. Like, I know part of the answer, but to be a successful business person, we really have to be that, right? So who are you being? One of the really important parts for us to be successful is to be consistent. And consistency can be visibility. Consistency can be having sales calls. Consistency can be just showing up every day and working on the important things in your business. So one of the important things is consistency. So it's important to have that. It makes one look back at their goals and benefits of such a goal. Exactly, right? You know, we can change our goals too. Questions like this can help us change our goals. But if your goal is to have a profitable business, and if your goal isn't to have a profitable business, then I'm going to ask you why you're like, if your goal isn't to have a profitable business, then you're more likely in a hobby. And I do meet lots of women entrepreneurs who are kind of in a hobby. They have, you know, in some cases they have alternate incomes. There's not a pressure to make money. We've been taught to not put ourselves first, so they don't even see that as an important part of their right as a business owner to make money. And they don't necessarily set goals, or they accept that it's okay for them not to make their goals. It's okay for us not to make money this month, right? It's okay. And it's not, because it pulls us down. So these questions really help in focusing you. And when you have goals, when you set a goal, when you create a 90-day plan, if you listen to me, I believe in 90-day plans of really focusing out. And I just did, 90-day plans don't have to be complicated. I just did my pages are crumpling. My 90-day plan on this very simple, it's 2 sheets. It's most of 90 days in there. I think it's short 2 weeks, just because of the way I created these. But it's 2 sheets, and I can work out my high-level 90-day plan on this, and then I can ask those questions associated with this. Because this is really what I need to be doing, right? I'm going to do a couple of events. I'm going to promote my product. I'm going to do stuff on a daily basis. But I can create a 90-day plan on 2 pieces of paper. And then it's about learning and asking ourselves why we're not getting there. Like, what worked well? Going back to those 4 questions. What worked? What didn't work? How did I feel? And what would I do differently? And asking those in all different avenues of what you do. So asking them as a close to your day. Awesome way. Another one that somebody suggested, which is the how do I feel, is flipping that around, is go, how do I want to feel? So that's a great start to your day. How do I want to feel today? How do I want to feel about my day today? It's a really great start to helping you prioritize and work on what you want to work on. How do I want to feel about today? I want to feel like I killed it today, right? I want to feel like I got all the things I needed to get done. I want to feel like I had great conversations today. I want to feel that I did my live really well and that people were engaged, right? You can see how that can really set your energy for your whole day. And it's a simple question to ask yourself in the morning. How do I want to feel today? And I was listening to, I don't know where I heard this in the last couple of weeks. It's actually a very powerful question to ask yourself before you go to bed. How do I want to feel tomorrow? Because there is some psychology about how you wake up is, excuse me, the first thought in the morning that you have when you wake up is the one that you had when you went to sleep. So whatever has been like on your mind when you went to sleep, whatever you're thinking about, you're thinking about that project you hadn't finished, you're thinking about the somebody you didn't call, you're thinking about somebody or whatever, that tends to be kind of the first emotion we wake up with. So if you ask yourself, how do I want to feel tomorrow? What do I want my day to be like? And you ask that question at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, or both, it can really be powerful to set your intention. And then you close off with these 4 questions. I challenge you in a nice, friendly way to try and ask these questions of yourself for the next, for the next couple of days or for the next week, and see what results you get from them. Because I'm experiencing them in this very simple challenge. I'm experiencing a higher level of productivity, and I'm also experiencing a lot more awareness of what I'm actually focusing on. So just by having those simple questions and making a commitment at the beginning, so what we did is at the beginning of this challenge, we were asked to commit to what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks. And some people were challenge accepted. Great, Linda. So some of the questions, like for one woman, was she's going to declutter 2 hours a day. So then through the week, we're asking, she's been asking herself, did I do my decluttering? Did I not? What resistance did I came up with? What worked well? What didn't work well? Right? So it doesn't have to be business. These questions apply to anything. For me, as I said earlier, it was working on my website and getting my next webinar activity going. So those are my 2 things that I'm working on over the next 14 days, or this is the 2nd week. Someone else is working on just posting on social media every day. So it doesn't matter what the topic is. It's about setting a commitment, actually hitting the commitment, and then asking yourself some very powerful questions. And the answers can be really insightful when we're willing to hear them. So that's the other part about powerful questions. We have to be able to listen to the answer. And I know sometimes when I'm really, really excited, I will ask a question and then ask another question before I even hear the answer to the question that I asked the first time. Have you ever done that? Where you're in a conversation with somebody and you're like, oh, this is a great conversation. You ask a question and then you're like, oh, I know the answer to that. And you roll over the question and then you ask another question and the recipient's like, oh, wow. Right? So we have to ask questions and be willing to listen to the answer. And that applies to ourselves as well. We have to give ourselves the answer and we have to be willing to listen to the answer and be curious about, not judgmental, but be curious about the answers that we come up with, and then think about how we can implement those changes and how we can do that. Because that's when questions, and that's really the core of coaching, right? The core of coaching is to ask powerful questions to allow people to really see what's possible for themselves, get excited by it, and take action. And then ask a powerful question. See what happens. See what happens, take action. And that's really the premise of really good coaching, which is different than therapy and consulting and all those other things. Really good coaching is about great questions, taking action, evaluating the success of the action, another great question, taking action, and it's that iterative approach that's going to get us where we want to go. So that's the power of questions. And does anybody have any questions about my questions? And Linda, I'm glad you accepted the challenge, because I think it's a really exciting way to just give yourself the gift of a little bit of introspective, about asking yourself 4 questions. Journal if journal makes sense for you. Don't journal if journaling doesn't make sense for you. And I say that, as I said earlier, as somebody who doesn't journal. And I do have journals. It's funny because I love books. I love really nice notebooks. So I have a little pile of half-written notebooks. But journaling isn't my way of processing. So figure out your own way of processing. It works, right? These questions really do work. Anything else on questions that you want to add or talk about? Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water or coffee. Any other questions? If you're looking at creating, and really, power of questions work when you have a goal and a plan. Thank you, Linda. Awesome session. Powerful questions really work when you have a goal and a plan to work towards. So that's an important part of what I do with my clients, is really create that goal and plan to work towards that. So if you want to know more about that, just drop a message me, and we can connect. And I'd love to chat with you about it. But thank you for attending live. And if anyone's listening to the replay and you have other powerful questions, Linda suggested some in here as well. If you have any other powerful questions that you suggest, please add them to the comments, because we are gifting each other. We're gifting each other something really special when we open ourselves up to questions that can change the way that we do things, and that can get us closer to the success that we want. So thank you. Thank you for being live, Linda. Thank you for being live, the other eyes that have been on here. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys coming to these calls. If there's anything in particular you want me to chat about, let me know. I have a list of topics, but I'm always open to new topics that come up. And we will be back next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern to chat about something else in the coaching world for us bold and beautiful business owners. So thank you, ladies. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.